Let's dive into this story and explore how one man turned a challenging situation into an inspiring journey of growth and resilience. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Ethan sat down with his cup of coffee, ready to tackle the bills. He and his wife, Laura, had always shared financial responsibilities, so their joint account was familiar territory. But something wasn't right. Ethan noticed a series of unexplained withdrawals, large amounts that didn't add up to their usual expenses. At first, he thought it was a banking error. But deep down, something felt off. Ethan's heart sank as he began piecing together recent changes in Laura's behavior. She had been working late for months, claiming an overwhelming workload. Ethan had brushed it off, trusting her completely. But now, the inconsistencies gnawed at him. Could there be more to her late nights at the office? Curiosity gave way to determination. Ethan decided to investigate, but discreetly. He didn't want to jump to conclusions without evidence. Over the next week, he kept his eyes open. He noticed how Laura's phone had become a permanent fixture in her hand, always turned away when he walked by. She seemed distracted, her laughter at dinner forced, as if her mind was elsewhere. Ethan's instincts told him there was a story behind the withdrawals. One evening, Laura accidentally left her phone on the kitchen counter. Ethan hesitated. Trust was the foundation of their relationship, after all. But the unanswered questions were too much to bear. Taking a deep breath, he opened her messages. What he found was devastating. There were texts between Laura and her boss, Michael. Messages full of affection, plans, and even a mention of the funds. It was a gut punch, but Ethan refused to let anger consume him. Instead, he decided to act smartly, not emotionally. He realized he needed to secure his finances before confronting Laura. In the following parts, we'll see how Ethan handled this betrayal with poise and how he used the situation to regain control of his life while staying true to his values. Stay tuned as this story unfolds into a tale of resilience, wisdom, and personal empowerment. Ethan knew he couldn't let emotions cloud his judgment. Instead of confronting Laura immediately, he decided to consult someone he trusted. He called his childhood friend, Mark, a calm and pragmatic financial advisor. Without revealing too many personal details, Ethan explained the situation and asked for guidance. Mark's advice was simple yet powerful. Secure yourself first, Ethan. Protect your assets and ensure you're on solid ground before making any big decisions. That night, Ethan logged into their joint bank account and meticulously reviewed every transaction from the past 6 months. He noticed not just the unexplained withdrawals but also purchases that didn't align with their usual lifestyle, luxury dinners, hotel bookings, and even gifts he'd never seen. Each detail painted a clearer picture of what had been happening behind his back. Mark had also suggested Ethan quietly open a separate account in his name. The next day, during his lunch break, Ethan visited the bank. He transferred enough money from the joint account to cover his immediate needs and secure his financial stability. He left enough in the joint account to avoid raising suspicion, but ensured his hard-earned savings were safe. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protecting himself. Ethan also took the opportunity to update his financial documents, including insurance policies and shared investments. He made sure he had full access to everything he needed in case things escalated. It was a small but empowering step in regaining control of a life that felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, Laura seemed blissfully unaware of his actions. She continued her routine as though nothing had changed, her behavior a mix of guilt and denial. Ethan, however, was growing more confident by the day. He wasn't the type to let betrayal define him. He would face it on his own terms, armed with clarity and strength. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He needed more information before confronting Laura. What was her plan? And why had she allowed things to spiral so far? As the days passed, Ethan remained calm on the surface, but his mind was working tirelessly behind the scenes. He had secured his finances, but there were still unanswered questions. Why had Laura betrayed their trust, and how long had this been going on? Ethan knew that before confronting her, he needed clarity, not just for himself, but to ensure he approached the situation with composure. Ethan started keeping a quiet but observant eye on Laura's behavior. It wasn't long before he found subtle signs confirming what he already suspected. Laura was spending more time on her phone, texting with a nervous energy. Her work-related excuses became increasingly flimsy, and there were nights when she came home smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't hers. Rather than letting anger consume him, Ethan channeled his emotions into careful planning. He decided to dig deeper, not out of spite but to prepare for the inevitable conversation. Using an old laptop Laura rarely touched, Ethan accessed shared documents stored on their cloud account. It didn't take long to find a trail of receipts and email exchanges between Laura and her boss, Michael. The truth was undeniable now. It wasn't just the betrayal of their marriage vows. Laura and Michael had even discussed future plans that excluded Ethan entirely. It was a heartbreaking discovery, but Ethan remained resolute. He reminded himself that this wasn't a reflection of his worth. It was a choice Laura had made. Ethan also discovered something surprising, a pattern in the bank transactions that suggested Laura had been redirecting funds to support her new relationship. It wasn't just dinners and gifts. She had even contributed toward Michael's personal expenses. Ethan couldn't help but feel a twinge of anger, but he quickly reminded himself of Mark's advice: keep your emotions in check. The smartest decisions come from a clear head. He gathered everything, screenshots, receipts, and transaction records, and saved them in a secure folder. He wasn't sure if he'd need them, but he wanted to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. That evening, Ethan sat on the back porch, staring at the setting sun. He wasn't angry anymore. He was determined. He realized this wasn't just about Laura's betrayal. It was about reclaiming his life, his peace, and his future. Ethan decided it was time to confront Laura. He didn't plan to yell or accuse. He wanted the conversation to be calm, direct, and focused on the facts. It wasn't easy. His emotions were raw, but he reminded himself that he deserved honesty and clarity. One evening, after dinner, Ethan gently said, "Laura, we need to talk. Something's been weighing on me, and I think it's time we address it." Laura's face shifted. Her usual composed demeanor faltered. She tried to brush it off, saying she was tired, but Ethan's steady gaze stopped her. "Laura," he continued, "I've noticed changes in our relationship, and I've also noticed unusual activity in our finances. I need to understand what's going on." For a moment, there was silence. Laura's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. But Ethan's calm tone left her with no choice but to respond. "What are you talking about?" "Everything's fine," she said, though her voice trembled. Ethan took a deep breath and opened his laptop, showing her the evidence he had gathered. "I know about the withdrawals, the messages, and the plans with Michael. I'm not here to argue or place blame. I just want to know why." Laura's expression crumbled. She started to explain, stumbling over her words. She admitted to the affair, saying it started as an emotional connection during a rough patch in their marriage. Michael had promised her a fresh start, she said, but she hadn't planned on hurting Ethan this way. Ethan listened, staying composed, though his heart ached. "I understand you've made your choice," he said, his voice steady. "But what I can't accept is being left in the dark while our shared resources are used for someone else's benefit." Laura looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Ethan continued, "I've already taken steps to protect myself financially. The rest is up to you. If you want to leave, I won't stop you, but I won't allow myself to be disrespected any longer." The room fell silent again. For the first time, Laura seemed to grasp the weight of her actions. Ethan, however, felt lighter. By calmly confronting the situation, he had taken back control of his life. The confrontation marked a turning point for Ethan. He had said what needed to be said, and now it was time to focus on what came next. Laura moved out the following week, leaving the house quieter than ever. But for Ethan, the silence wasn't oppressive, it was liberating. It marked the beginning of a new chapter. In the days that followed, Ethan took small but meaningful steps toward rebuilding his life. First, he met with Mark again to discuss his long-term financial plans. Together, they reviewed his budget, investments, and the remaining balance in the joint account. Mark's advice was clear: focus on what you can control. Use this as an opportunity to realign your priorities. Ethan also took a hard look at his home, which now felt like a space filled with memories that no longer served him. He started making changes, not drastic ones, but enough to give the house a fresh start. He repainted the walls, moved furniture around, and replaced a few items that held too much emotional weight. It was therapeutic, a way to reclaim the space as his own. Meanwhile, Ethan reached out to close friends and family. He wasn't looking for pity. He wanted connection. Sharing his story with people he trusted reminded him that he wasn't alone. His sister, Emily, told him something that stuck with him. "This is your chance to focus on you, Ethan. Think about the things you've always wanted to do, but never had the time or energy for." Inspired, Ethan made a list of personal goals. Some were small, like joining a local gardening club, while others were more ambitious, like starting a side business he'd always dreamed of. Every step he took, no matter how small, helped him regain a sense of purpose and control. Surprisingly, Ethan also found strength in gratitude. He began journaling each morning, jotting down 3 things he was thankful for. Some days, it was as simple as a warm cup of coffee or a sunny afternoon. Other days, it was the realization that he was free to chart a new course for his life. But perhaps the most significant change was Ethan's mindset. He stopped viewing himself as a victim and started seeing himself as a survivor, someone who had faced a painful truth and come out stronger on the other side. Ethan's journey toward rebuilding his life wasn't just about moving on, it was about rediscovering himself. For years, he had poured his energy into his marriage, often at the expense of his own interests. Now, with a fresh start, he decided it was time to invest in himself. One of Ethan's first steps was joining a local gardening club. It had been years since he'd tended to his small backyard garden, but he remembered how much joy it used to bring him. On his first visit to the club, he was warmly welcomed by a group of passionate hobbyists. It wasn't just about the plants, it was about the sense of community and shared purpose. Ethan found himself looking forward to the weekly meetings, where he learned new techniques and swapped stories with fellow enthusiasts. At the same time, Ethan began pursuing a long-held dream, starting a small woodworking business. He had always enjoyed working with his hands, creating furniture and decorative pieces in his spare time. Now, with a bit more space and focus in his life, he decided to turn his hobby into a side hustle. He set up a small workshop in the garage, dusted off his tools, and got to work. Ethan started by crafting simple items like birdhouses and picture frames. Slowly but surely, word spread among his neighbors and gardening club members. Orders began trickling in, and before long, Ethan was earning a modest but fulfilling income doing something he loved. Ethan also made time for self-care. He started taking long walks in the park, appreciating the quiet moments of reflection they brought. He even joined a local yoga class, something he'd never imagined doing before. It helped him not only stay physically active but also find peace of mind. Perhaps most importantly, Ethan worked on letting go of resentment. It wasn't easy, but he knew that holding on to anger would only weigh him down. He focused instead on the positives, the lessons he'd learned, the strength he discovered, and the new opportunities that had come his way. One day, while journaling, Ethan wrote a simple but powerful statement: "I am more than this chapter of my life. I am the author of my story." This mindset shift transformed everything. Ethan no longer viewed himself through the lens of betrayal. He saw himself as someone capable of growth, resilience, and happiness, regardless of the circumstances. Ethan's journey had come full circle. What started as a heartbreaking discovery evolved into a transformative experience, shaping him into a stronger, more self-aware person. He had faced betrayal, reclaimed his life, and embraced the chance to create a future that reflected his true values and passions. Months after Laura had left, Ethan found himself in a completely different place, mentally, emotionally, and even socially. His woodworking business had grown steadily, and his handcrafted pieces were now displayed in a local boutique. The sense of accomplishment he felt with each finished project was unmatched. It wasn't about the money. It was about creating something meaningful with his own 2 hands. The gardening club had also become a source of joy and connection. He had made friends who supported him and shared his enthusiasm for growth, both in the garden and in life. Together, they worked on a community project to transform an empty lot into a beautiful public garden, a symbol of renewal that mirrored Ethan's own journey. Ethan's story didn't just inspire himself, it began to inspire others. When he shared his experiences with close friends, they often marveled at how he had turned a painful chapter into a springboard for growth. "You didn't just survive, Ethan," his sister Emily said one day. "You thrived. You showed that it's possible to rebuild a life that's even better than before." This realization sparked an idea. Ethan started writing a blog, sharing his thoughts and lessons on resilience, self-discovery, and starting over. The blog gained traction among readers who found comfort and motivation in his words. Ethan wasn't just healing himself, he was helping others heal, too. One afternoon, while sitting on his freshly painted porch, Ethan reflected on how far he'd come. He realized that, for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by a deep gratitude for the life he had rebuilt. As he watched the sunset, he smiled, knowing that his story was still being written. There were no guarantees in life, but Ethan had learned that with resilience, self-belief, and a willingness to embrace change, he could handle whatever came his way. And so, Ethan closed that chapter of his life not with bitterness, but with hope. He had turned heartbreak into an opportunity to rediscover himself, and in doing so, he had found something far greater than what he had lost, his own strength.